Ruin on the Rock, by Eliza Fenwick. Volume 2, Letters 8 and 9. Letter 8. From Sibella Valmont to Caroline Ashburn. Imagine me, dear Caroline, sitting down to write to you in the dead of night, by an almost extinguished taper. Somewhat chilled with cold, yet that sensation overpowered by the tremor of surprise, of curiosity, of emotions, in fine, which I cannot describe or explain. And shall I boast of my strength, yet suffer my heart to palpitate, the colour to vary on my cheek, because an incident appears extraordinary? Why did I not go back? Perhaps imagination was on the stretch, and I am self-deceived. Yet this writing! There must— but who would or could sigh with or for me, save one? Foolish, weak Sibella! Art thou turned coward then? How canst thou brave dangers, who hast fled from a sound? Perchance a fancied sound too. Yes, I will return. I will not wait till daylight renews my courage, but go now to the wood, and examine this. Hark! I hear a noise. Good God! Is it? If it should be my Oh no, that is impossible. It was only the sweeping of the wind through that long gallery. But I won't go to the wood to-night, Caroline. I tremble more, and the cold increases. My taper too diminishes fast. But while its light allows me, I will go over the events of the day and night, to discover if distinct recollection gives them a different appearance from what they now wear in the confusion of my ideas. To begin, then, with the morning. While yet at breakfast, Andrew entered my room and intimated it was my uncle's orders that I should remain in my own apartments all day. Strange as appeared the command, I sought no explanation from Andrew, but chose rather to submit to it in its present form than encounter the teasing unintelligible signs of this silent old man. An hour had hardly passed when I heard Mr. Valmont's footstep in the gallery, and as he approached nearer my door, I called up a firmness in my mien, for methought his visit to my chamber, a circumstance I never remember to have taken place, foreboded something uncouth and unpleasant. "So, Sibella," said he, entering in a cheerful manner, "you look quite well. You will oblige me particularly by not going into the park to-day. There is the armoury if you want exercise, only be sure you go and return by the narrow staircase. I would not have you seen for a moment in any other part of the castle. Perhaps I may bring a friend to visit you. A friend of your father's, child. You'll obey me, Sibella, and Andrew can inform you when you are at liberty to pursue your rambles." He withdrew. An address so familiar, with a voice and countenance so complacent from Mr. Valmont to me, was food for reflection. The friend, too, the friend of my father! I felt not the necessity of exercise. I approached not the narrow staircase. I thought not of the armoury. I remained in one posture, and Andrew's entrance, with my dinner, first broke in upon my reverie. The meal ended and Andrew gone, it was resumed, and as long thinking will ever bring something home to the affections, I had left Mr. Valmont, his smiles, and his friend, to dwell on the image of my Clement, when my uncle led into the room a man somewhat older in appearance than himself, of an unmeaning countenance, whose profusion of dress sat heavy on an insignificant form. I turned away scornfully, for I thought it a profanation of the term to call this being the friend of my father. How long he stayed I cannot exactly tell. Too long, I thought then. He seemed to talk of me to Mr. Valmont, but to me he said little, and owing perhaps to my dislike of the man, that little I did not rightly understand, and never attempted to answer. When I saw Andrew in the evening, I ventured a few questions, and with difficulty learned there was company in the castle, who were not expected to go away till late. I desired him to inform me as soon as they had departed, and accordingly, a little before 12, Andrew opened my door, gave 3 distinct nods, shut it after him, and departed. I understood his signal. Never had I passed a day in the house before, and I almost panted for the enjoyment of fresh air. The night was calm and serene, and the moon shone with a frosty brightness in a clear unclouded sky. Wrapping myself in a cloak, I descended with a quick and joyful step. Neither light nor sound existed in the castle, and unbarring the heavy doors, I sallied out in defiance of cold, to enjoy the lightness I then felt at my heart. The moonbeam directed my course, and I turned up the hill at the back part of the castle, where no trees intercepted the partial light. Standing on the summit, I looked around and my eye caught the glittering surface, made resplendent by the moon's reflection, of that small and beautiful lake which you may remember rises on the skirts of my wood. Thither I hastened, and seated on the bank I became enraptured with the scene. All seemed in union with my mind, only that an undisturbed serenity reigned through nature, and with the peace in my breast a tumult of delight claimed its share. I sang, I gave vent to my pleasure in words, in exclamations, till at length the sound of two, from some very distant bell, floated through the air, and I rose to regain the castle. Never in daytime did I quit the park without visiting our oak, and now when my heart bounded high with hope and pleasure, it would have been impious thus to have departed. As I passed the rock, its dark shade with the gloom in which the tall trees enclosed me gave a new colour to my emotions. A pensive, but not a painful, tenderness stole on me. My breast began to heave, my lip to tremble, and having reached the oak, I threw myself on the ground and sobbed. Still I felt no unhappiness. An impressive kind of awe took place of my former rapture, and dictated that I should dry my tears, and offer up a prayer for Clement. At the foot of our oak I knelt and audibly prayed. Still was I kneeling, still were my clasped hands raised. I uttered a deep sigh, and close behind me reverberated a prolonged sigh, if possible more deep, more forcible. My taper emits its last rays, the moon is withdrawn, and total darkness compels me to seek rest. Adieu. The sigh was distinct. It struck upon my ear. It almost reached my heart, Caroline. Dizzy, benumbed, I could scarcely rise, and as I walked slowly along the open path from the monument, I really tottered. I believe I had proceeded 50 yards, and I began to tread with firmness and to consider if the sound could be real, when something whizzed past me, and I perceived a little white ball fall to the ground and roll back, as it was on the descent, till it stopped at my feet. Equally surprised, but less affected, I turned quickly round. I looked every way, but the rock, the trees, the monument, and their respective, yet mingling shadows, were the only objects I could discern. I do not remember stooping for the ball, yet I felt it in my hand as I returned to the castle. I had left my light burning in the hall, but did not attempt to examine my possession till I had shut myself in my own chamber. The ball consisted of several folds of paper, with a small pebble in the middle, to give it weight, I suppose. The inner fold contained lines written with a pencil, the character neat but uneven, and in places scarcely legible. These were the contents. Art thou instructed, beauteous nymph, that those planets to which thou now liftest thine eyes contain worlds whose myriads of inhabitants differ in their degrees of perfection according to the orb to which they belong? Some approach to immortality. Others are, as yet, farther removed. But all are in a progressive state toward the angelic nature. Even the lowest orb ranks above thy world. From one of these latter planets I descend, part mortal and part ethereal. The former subjects me to pain and grief, but the latter can exalt me to bliss too ecstatic for the confined sense of mere mortality. My spiritual nature places few bounds to my wishes, gives me invisibility, and brings the world before me at a view. I can see into the human bosom, and art cannot baffle me. In this world I am permitted to seek a friend, and thee, hallowed inhabitant of this lower orb, I claim. Set thy desires before thee. If they be many, choose the essential. If they be few, name all. Tomorrow after sunset, place the paper wherein thou hast written thy wishes on the tomb, and retire. If another mortal claim a share of those wishes, my power ceases. But if they relate only to thyself, fair creature, some one I may gratify. Thus may we communicate. To approach is forbidden. To be visible to thy eyes is denied me. Fly not then from the spirit, which will protect, but cannot harm thee. Whither does recollection bear you, Caroline? To the hermit of the wood and armoury, doubtless. The mysterious and whimsical style of this written paper corresponds with the first address of that hermit. I wonder I did not remember it last night, but Clement's fears and the mode to overcome them have been objects of such magnitude in the heart of Sibella, that curiosity has ceased to intrude its train of remembrances and suppositions. Clement was right. Who but through my uncle's means could find entrance into this region of caution and confinement? Yes, Clement judged rightly. It is the man to whom Mr. Valmont says I must be united. Will you, Caroline, give the enclosed to my Clement, and judge with him for me? I wait your decision, but I wait unwillingly. Sibella. Letter 9. To Clement Montgomery, enclosed in the preceding. Do we not create our own misery, my Clement, by this submission? Mr. Valmont separates our persons, because he cannot separate our hearts. Oh, your reasonings were false, my love, and I was only misled when I thought I was convinced. But a short time, you said, and Mr. Valmont shall know it all, and we will be again united. Why not now? I cannot feel, I cannot understand these effects of his displeasure on which you dwell. Why do you dream of future benefits, when he tells you that you are to have none of them? When he declares to you his wealth shall not be yours? And what of that? Will joy and felicity be less ours, because we are not rich? We know it cannot. Did you possess wealth beyond what I can name, I should share its advantages. Then, if poverty or disgrace be yours, I demand to participate therein. It is my right, and 20 Mr. Valmonts shall not deprive of the inestimable privilege. Let me prove by actions the boundless love I bear you. Words are feeble. Where is the language that has energy enough to describe the crowd of pleasures which rush upon my mind while I am retracing our past scenes of happiness, or that can give its true colouring to my regret when I call up the present separation which bids them depart for a season? Clement, you are dismissed that another may be introduced. The man of mystery, he whom my uncle has chosen, appears again. Say, my love, shall I tell them how useless are all their preparations? That you and I have formed the indissoluble band? I am ready to do this. I wait but your consent, and then, if Mr. Valmont resents our conduct, and will not yield me to you and your freedom, I must and shall find means to show him he has no more power over my person than my mind. I will escape him, and fly to thee. Ever, ever thy Sibella. End of section 26.